Hello, Joseph. You're on with Paul, Denise, and Big A.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey, buddy. We were just discussing your case, which we didn't want to do before because we wanted to talk to you about it.
We're just very, very intrigued by it, and
I mean, watched.
Yeah, my personal opinion, you did not get justice served. I think, I don't know.
I guess we're jumping in right to the end of the story immediately.
Oh, really?
I'm actually upset about it. I really am upset about it.
You know, I'm glad you feel that way, honestly, because you're right. I didn't get justice. Not only did I not get justice, I didn't even have the opportunity to get justice. And when people actually delve into the story, they get upset and they get angry and they get mad and aggravated, and that it makes me happy because it means that the story reached you the way that I hoped it would. So thank you for being upset. I really do appreciate that. And yeah, it's bullshit, to be honest. Plain and simple, it's just bullshit.
It's absolutely bullshit.
It is.
I mean, you say you didn't get your day in court. Were you interested in going into court and having charges brought against the guy? I know you went to the sentencing, but was he ever charged with what he did to you?
The Maxim Gelman, the murderer?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was charged with attempted murder, and I did actually get to go to court for the sentencing. Because he pled guilty, there was no need to go to court for that. So he got 25 years for attempted murder on top of the 200 years that he received earlier for the 4 murders that happened the night before. So it wasn't the court that I'm speaking of is not necessarily going to court against Maxim Gelman because it is what it. I would say it is what it is with him. I mean, he tried to kill me and he failed, and there was nothing personal between him and I before that. So my personal beef where I wanted to go to court was against the NYPD, well, 2 NYPD officers and the city, and the city I didn't get that opportunity. So that's the part I'm upset about. As far as Gelman, I mean, it was pretty cut and dry. He pled guilty, and because when I was attacked, it happened in Manhattan. The murders all happened in Brooklyn, so he was sentenced in Brooklyn first, and he got 200 years. So for me to want to go to court to get more than the 25 years that he got would be silly because he's not going to live to be 200 anyway. It's a shame that he's even still living now.
Yeah.
So
exactly. I wonder what was the reason? Does New York have a death penalty right now? I'm trying to think. I mean,
no. You know what? I have to be honest. I don't think we do. And I think it's like anything else with politics. I mean, I came from when this all happened. I'm originally from New York, but I did live in Philadelphia for 10 years, and that's where I was living at the time. And they have the death penalty there, but it is very rarely used. I mean, there's a person sitting on death row in Philadelphia right now, Mumia Abu Jamal, who's been on death row for, I can't even say how many years he's been on because I actually don't know. But he's been on death row for so long, and he's gotten support from people in Hollywood and things like that. So he's sort of like a martyr or whatever you want to say. But so even if you have the death penalty, I guess anywhere outside of Texas, it doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah, no, New York doesn't have it. They in 2007. Yeah, they thought that it was unconstitutional.
Yeah, okay.
So they, you know what they did? Yeah,
I think that
they changed it from a death sentence to life.
That rule is about as bad as they're saying we're not allowed to torture fucking terrorists in Guantanamo Bay. It's the stupidest fucking thing on the planet.
Yeah, and even before my incident, I've always been pro death penalty, and so now what I say is it's adding insult to injury now. Since I'm a resident of New York, not only did the guy who tried to kill me not get death, I get to help support him now in prison for the rest of his life with my tax dollars.
Let's just use everybody's taxpayers' money to.
Yeah.
What did you say to him when you went in?
Scum alive.
When you went to sentence him, what did you say to him?
I kind of. What happened? The story behind that was I had read in the papers when he was sentenced in Brooklyn, he was very rude, and he said some pretty bitter things to the family of the people that he had murdered. You know, no remorse type stuff, and you know, calling her a whore and this and that. And you know, like from what you read, and it affected the people greatly. I mean, it's only natural. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to let it happen to me. So I didn't want any of my family members there when I got to speak to him and everything. And I just kind of said, all right, I'm going to have some fun with this. Mm-hmm. And you know, basically, there's actually an article. I wish I had it handy. There's an article in the New York Times that the New York Times had printed, and they kind of got the whole exchange pretty good word for word verbatim. And basically, it was just me kind of trying to take shots at him, telling him that when I took him down, you know, he went down really easy.
Oh yeah.
And you know, yeah, and just about you know, how he's a child, and instead of taking his ball and going home, he killed 4 people and things like that. And I wanted to make sure that I had mentioned the names of the 4 people he killed, and not that I think any of it penetrated, because I think at that point he was beyond reproach, and nothing was going to penetrate him. I mean, he was so far gone. But, you know, it was just important for me to get this stuff off my chest. And by the time it got sort of heated between the two of us, I had maintained my composure pretty good, but I could start to kind of feel myself, my insides, you know, kind of start getting that adrenaline shake going and everything. And I kind of just cut it short at the end. But I felt like I had said everything I needed to say. And, you know, at the end of the day, it was me going out with my boss. 2 of my bosses had come to support me, and a friend of mine had come to document it. And when it was over, we went out for chicken parmesan gyros and a beer, and he went to jail, hopefully to get anally raped. So,
yeah,
so
exactly.
really, you know, yeah. So the words were kind of like the cherry on top. But you know, no matter what I said, that's how it was going to end. I was going to go free, and I was going to go enjoy my afternoon, and he was going to jail. So, no matter what I said, it was a win for me.
I wonder if he ever asked you to come see him in jail, would you go?
No, I mean, there's I don't have any. You know, I think a lot of times with these TV shows where they want to do a documentary where you go see the guy that tried to kill you and everything. Right. I think there's a lot of unresolved stuff with either with the victim or the perpetrator, and I think of myself as a pretty logical person. And the fact is, before that day, I had no association with Maxim Gelman. Since that day and since the sentencing, I've had no association with him. It was just a matter of a guy that was on a rampage, and I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So, yeah, it sucked. You know, I mean, for lack of a better word, it sucked when he tried to kill me. But if it was, say, someone in my family or someone that I had known where it could be something personal, I might have a harder time adjusting to that, because then I'd want to know, well, what happened that this person or my wife or one of my sons or something, what happened that they would actually try to kill me? Then I'd have a lot of unresolved stuff. This was just a case of me being in a particular seat on a subway and he tried to kill me. I think it wasn't anything that he went after me specifically. It was he was going after whomever was sitting in that seat at the time. So I don't have anything unresolved to get my head right with, because I take it for what it is on face value. So if anyone wanted me to go visit him in jail and do like a face-to-face type thing, they'd have to pony up a lot of money, because there's nothing. Well, you know, only because there's nothing in it for me. I don't care. You know, basically, I can tell you what's going to happen. We're going to sit down, we're going to have words, and then that's it. You know, it's really, there's going to be nothing in it for me. He's going to say some stupid things. I'm going to, you know, call him an asshole or a douchebag or whatever. Mm-hmm. Nothing's going to get resolved, because it's not about forgiveness, because, you know, I can hold a grudge with the best of them for people that do the tiniest thing to me. Forget about someone that tries to lobotomize me. So there's no forgiveness on my part, and honestly, I'm sure he doesn't want it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a meeting like that probably won't go down, and if the network was out there that wanted me to do it, they'd have to pull me up a boatload of cash.
Are you glad that you didn't actually kill him that day?
No.
Okay, that's why I didn't think you would be.
No, I play it over and over in my head all the time. Not all the time, but when someone asks me about it, no. If there's, and I don't want to say regret, but if there's 2 scenarios that I wish would have happened. One, I got the knife, and I was able to end his life. I would have done it because, it's not like people say, oh, I'm going to kill this guy, I'm going to kill that guy. When everything was going down, I wasn't myself. I was a different person. I was in pure survival mode. So, but I remember everything, and I know the mode I was in. If I had gotten a knife, there wouldn't have been any mercy. There would have been, I would have done my best to plunge the knife into his throat or into his heart. I have no problem saying that.
Right.
The other thing is, and of course, being in New York, this is an impossibility, but I wish I had a gun. I would have blown his brain matter all over the subway.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, he wanted to kill you. It wasn't like he just wanted to give you a slap and walk away. If he had the chance, you'd be dead. End of story.
Yeah, I mean, there's no, like I said, I'm pretty old school when it comes to this stuff. I believe an eye for an eye, or I heard someone say, forget an eye for an eye, two eyes for an eye. Someone does something to you. Yeah, I'm a full believer in revenge. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Law Abiding Citizen.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, I love that movie before this happened, but ever since this happened, especially dealing with the court system, that's like porn for me. I love that movie. I love revenge movies, and yeah, if I had a gun, there would be no question. I would have blown his head off right there, and they'd still be scraping it off. But this is New York, and that's not a possibility. But no, if I can say unequivocally and without a doubt and without even blinking, if I could have ended his life that day, there would have been no question he'd be dead.
Wow, I totally agree.
Has it affected you, like today, like when you ride subways, or do you have any kind of like stress factors from it?
Honestly, I even before this happened, I find myself saying this a lot even before this happened, but even before this happened, I wasn't a big fan of subways. I'm not a big fan of having my personal space invaded, and subways are a good place to have your personal space invaded, to be honest. So, when I first went back to work afterwards, my boss would actually meet me at Penn Station and ride the subway with me. And I told him he didn't have to do that, but that's just the kind of guy that he is. And then after a couple of days of it, I was like, this is kind of silly, for one, it didn't really affect me because I'm a pretty practical person. I need to work, and I don't have the money to take a limo or even a cab to work every day. So I have to take the subway. And I didn't really trust people that much anyway to begin with. So I always have my guard up to begin with. So until I win the lottery and I don't have to take the subway, I didn't really have much of a choice. I try to, like, even what we discussed about how I feel about Gelman, and if I ever wanted to meet him or anything like that, as I said, there's no unresolved issues for me. I try to be pretty reasonable with things, and forget about saying, well, what are the chances you're going to get attacked on the subway a second time, because there's enough stupid people in the city that it could happen again. But it is what it is. I mean, I need it's if I wanted to walk to work every day after I got off the Long Island Railroad, you're talking about a 32, 33 block walk, which is great for fitness, but not for time. I'd have to leave extra early and all this other nonsense. So I don't really have much of a choice. So in the beginning, honestly, it was a little bit weird. I would sit there and wonder, I wonder if this is a car, I wonder. And they would go through my mind, and they all look the same. So there really is no way of knowing, and I'm sure it's in circulation. I don't know if you remember, we had the guy, I guess it was in the late 80s or the 90s, a guy shot up the Long Island Railroad car, a guy named Colin Ferguson. And, he killed a bunch of people, and the railroad still has the two cars that were involved in that. They have that still in circulation, and I don't know how many people know that, but they do. So it's all the same company, the MTA. So I'm sure the car that I was attacked in is still in circulation. So I guess the answer to your question, that seems like you asked me 10 minutes ago, is it's weird, but I don't have any other choice, so I have to do it.
Right. So you grew up in New York, but then you moved to Philly. Were you working in New York the whole time when you moved to Philly?
Yeah, basically what happened was I grew up in New York. I lived in New York. I got a job opportunity. I'm a big sports fan, and one of the, I think everyone knows Topps, the baseball cards, the sports cards.
Right.
For a while there, one of the biggest rivals was a company called Fleer, and I got an opportunity to work for them, and they're located in South Jersey. So when at the time I didn't have kids, so when I went down, it was just my wife and I, and we looked for places on the Jersey side, and we looked for places on the Philadelphia side. So we liked Philly a lot. We ended up settling down there. Now, when I first went down there, the object was to not come back. I was going to work for Fleer, and I was going to retire there and have a family, and then plant roots down there and stay. Unfortunately, things didn't work out at Fleer as a company, and I was there maybe about 5 years, and they filed bankruptcy. So now the sole reason why I went down there is now gone. So, and at the time, I was out of work for 3 months, which nowadays does not seem like a long time because so many people have been out of work for so long. But at the time, that was a long time. Now people will be like, oh, I've been out of work a year, I've been out of work 2 years. But at the time, 3 months was a long time, especially when I have two kids I have to support and two young kids, and we don't have a support system down there because all our family's still up in New York. So at the time, I was looking for work down in Philadelphia, down in South Jersey, but also up in New York. So I ended up actually getting work at Madison Square Garden, working in their box office. And then later on, an opportunity came along where I work now at David Geffen Hall, which at the time was Avery Fisher Hall. Right. So I was basically doing the commute for a few years from Philadelphia to New York because we liked it down there, and I still do. I think Philadelphia is an underrated city. I mean, it gets a lot of shit from people, but I love it. It's total blue collar, and the people are awesome. Right. And I love living down there. And for a while, yeah, the commute sucked. It's 2.5 hours one way, so I'm doing 5 hours round trip every day. But I'm making money up in New York, and I'm living down in Philadelphia where it's a lot less to live. The only thing that I was really sacrificing was my time. But then one day I wake up and my kids are 2 years older, and I'm like, Jesus, where did the fucking time go?
Right.
And then this happened. Yeah, exactly. Like I'm leaving early in the morning, they're sleeping. I'm getting home late at night, they're asleep, and I'm trying to soak in every ounce of them that I can on my days off, and that's great. I mean, I have a great relationship with my sons, and they understood at the time why I was doing it, but as a dad, it's like, for all the good things I think I do for them, I'll never get that time back. So it was always on my mind, maybe we come back, and like I said, if I get work up here, which at the time I did at the Garden, let's come back if we can come back. And then after everything happened with the incident, I said, you know what, I'm not one for counseling. Like a lot of people, you should go see a counselor. You know what? I'm not going to go see a counselor that doesn't know me. If I'm going to talk to someone and bare my soul and open my heart, it's going to be to someone that knows me, like someone in my family, like my mother or my sister or something. Right. And they're here in New York, and like my wife's family's still here. So you couple, all those factors together, you put them together, and then it was kind of a logical thing to do, which is to move back up here. So at the time, I was living in Philadelphia. I was commuting to work in New York, but now I'm back up here. I think we've been back up about 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I used to do a commute. I moved down the shore, and I worked in North Jersey, and there was no trains, no buses that went that way, so I had to do 91 miles in my car each way. It was a great job. I did it for like
You did it for about
3 years. No, I did like 5 years.
5 years?
Yeah, and I was done with that. I mean, it was great money, but then when you took into account, you're destroying a car every 3-4 years, and gas and tolls and the friggin' Parkway. Yeah, and I was leaving at 4:40 in the morning, getting home at 5 o'clock, which is
it's totally, and in the beginning, I think you'd think, and I don't know if this is a person thing. I know it's definitely a man thing. Like as a man, you're like, I could do this. It's a good job. I'm making money. I got, if you have a family, I got to support my family. And where I think sometimes women kind of think things through a little bit more. But as a man, you're like, fuck this. I could do this. I know I could do this. And like you experienced that, and like I did when I was going back and forth. And I'm like, I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for my kids. And they know it and they appreciate it. But after a while, you're like, this is fucking wearing me out.
Exactly.
Yeah, I went for a
my
job.
brother's doing it now. And
I went for a job interview in the World Trade Center, so that could have ended up two bad ways. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
I was nearly in Tower 2 commuting from down here. But at least in New York City, there's a bus right down the street from me, like a mile from my house. You have to sit on the bus for like an hour and 50 minutes each way, you know.
Yeah.
So when did you get into MMA? Have you always been a sporty jockey kind of guy, or?
Yeah. You know, the story I tell people about MMA. A buddy of mine, actually, aside from my family, my buddy Dean, he's basically my best friend. He's basically a brother. And the day before UFC 1, he called me up and he said, "Hey, did you hear about this thing that's on pay-per-view tomorrow night?" And I said, "No, I had no idea." He's like, "Yeah, it's this thing. It's you know, boxing versus wrestling versus jiu-jitsu versus karate versus all stuff. It's basically, you know, what's the best discipline in the world?" And I was like, "Oh, that sounds pretty interesting."
Right.
So the next night, I was in my living room and I was watching it, just like probably hundreds of thousands of other people, and just like those same people, I was kind of intrigued by the whole thing, and I was hooked right then and there. So I'm actually proud to say that I have been a fan since the first UFC, because I'm a baseball fan, but I haven't been a baseball fan since the first pitch. Or, you know, I like football and I like hockey, but those all originated long before I was even born. So I'm actually, I say it with a great deal of pride that, you know, I'm always grateful to my friend Dean that he let me know, because if he didn't let me know, I'm sure I would have heard about it after the fact. But the fact that I was able to watch it and enjoy it that first night. So it's been something I've been really interested in since that night, and after my incident, I'd say the MMA community really put its arms around me, and you know, I've got to know several people within the sport, and it just took something I was already rabid about and made it that much more rabid. So.
Good for you.
Were you into one of those disciplines before you saw the mixed martial arts?
No, you know, I think before I watched, I was into wrestling, but not real wrestling like WWF at the time. You know, I grew up on that. It was one of the few sports that my dad was never a sports fan, but we'd always watch wrestling. And back then, we'd watch it. We had it on Channel 9 a couple of times on the weekend, and we were so into it, we'd watch the Spanish channels at night, like Saturday night. We'd watch the wrestling with the Spanish commentary. We'd have no idea what they were saying, but we really enjoyed it. So I was into WWF at the time. I really, to be honest with you, before UFC 1, I had no experience I'd heard of jiu-jitsu, but I couldn't have told you what it was about. You know, if you said jiu-jitsu, I'd be like, yeah, I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is. So I think as a kid in New York, you know, American kid, I knew boxing, I knew wrestling. You know, everyone, growing up in the 70s and 80s, there was a karate dojo on every corner. You know, karate was the thing here, you know, in the neighborhoods where I grew up in, so I knew that too. But I didn't know a lot about jiu-jitsu or a lot of the other ones. I knew kickboxing, obviously, but none of them were like a passion before that. And like I said, I could say, yeah, I was a wrestling fan, but I'm not going to say I was a wrestling fan of like collegiate wrestling or Olympic wrestling. It was really WWF. So really UFC 1 opened my eyes to not only mixed martial arts, but to the individual disciplines as well.
I would imagine that watching UFC after watching WWF, you're like, wow, these guys are actually doing it for real.
Well, you know, it's funny because I was really young at the time, and I always remember my dad. You know, I grew up in Queens, and pretty much everyone in the neighborhood was we were like all Italians or Germans or Irish and everything, and it seemed like everyone on the block, the dads and the sons, followed wrestling. So I just remember a lot of times everyone saying, well, you know, it's fake, but the 5% that's real is crazy and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think even as a kid I realized, yeah, I know this is kind of predetermined, but the abuse they're putting their bodies in is kind of crazy. And but when you watch MMA and you watch UFC and the early UFCs, I mean, that was it was pretty brutal. So it was just, I think like I said, I think I had the same reaction a lot of people had, that weren't into the individual disciplines at the time. Like, holy shit, this is fucking crazy. But I wasn't offended by it. And when UFC 2 rolled around, I was there buying the pay-per-view all over again.
Yeah, I enjoyed wrestling in England. We didn't have the pump and all of the WWF. We did, I guess you guys call it Greco-Roman type, you know, like the stuff they do at colleges and universities, that kind of wrestling. But they
yeah, Greco-Roman or freestyle.
Yeah, they had this one thing where they put 21 people inside the ring, and the ring's not as big as the one you guys have over here, and you have to throw everybody off the top rope, everybody out, and whoever's left wins. And there's always this massive, like 500-pound guy in there that everybody just decides to try and throw over first, because if you're on your own, you're fucked. You're not getting him out, you know.
I think WWF does that too. And you know, if we were having this conversation, say 20, 25 years ago, I could tell you exactly what that is. I know one of their pay-per-view events is basically that, where they don't start it with everyone in the ring at the time, but I think every 2 minutes, like they started with 2 guys, and I think every 2 minutes they add another guy.
Right.
So if guys aren't eliminated, then eventually you get 10, 15 guys in the ring at once, and I think you get eliminated by getting thrown over the top rope. And like you say, once there's like a 400 or 500 pound guy in there, you're going to get guys that are going to try to get them over, because you don't want to be the final 2 guys in there with a woolly mammoth and then you. So I mean, that they do that too. I mean, I don't know if they still do it, because I haven't watched wrestling in probably 15 or 20 years, but I'm sure they do, because I know it was huge at the time, so I'm sure they still do it. I know they do pay-per-views all the time.
Right.
I'm sure they still do that one.
I remember when WWF first came out, we used to get it on pay-per-view in England, and we watched it because it was something different. It was like a glitzy version of wrestling, you know? We got that glow.
Yeah.
Remember Glow? What was it?
I actually do. I actually do remember that. Yeah, I do remember that.
There was one where this woman had like a torch, you know, flame torch, acetylene torch, whatever you call them, and she's like putting it in the girl's face.
I don't remember.
I was like, but is this real?
Yeah.
You know, they just wanted to be one step above WWF, because they were starting from down. So they're like, let's just stick a thing of mace in the guy's face. Who cares?
Yeah. That I don't remember. I can say I don't remember anyone specific. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I do remember Glow, and you know, like I said, I respect these guys a ton. You know, in the now WWE, because you know, their schedule is crazy. You know, they work so many nights out of the year. And, you know, the abuse that their body takes, especially now, it's just, like I said, it's just lunacy, the stuff that they do, and the abuse they put their body through. And I think that's why a lot of them end up on pills and things like that, because you don't have any recovery time, at least, you know, in mixed martial arts and boxing and in real wrestling, let's say. You're not fighting you're not fighting 3 times in a weekend, and then you're not getting in a car and driving X amount of hours, and you're in the MMA and even in the disciplines that make up MMA, you have a fight, and then you have a couple of months to recuperate, or if you're injured, you have 6 months to recuperate. The body at some point is going to betray you, and you're going to, like a lot of these guys, the WWE guys, I think that's why they end up in bad ways, because they end up taking all these pills, and they end up doing the hardcore drugs, but it's the only way they know how to get relief, I guess. So I have a ton. I don't watch it, but I will never shit on those guys, because what they do, and listen, you know, I'm sure the bigger guys make a shitload of money, but the guys that are coming up, I'm sure they're not making anything, but they're doing it to hopefully get there one day. So I don't have to watch it to respect them, and those guys get my respect tenfold.
Yeah, I don't think that anyone will argue that those guys are crazy fit and crazy strong and crazy disciplined. You know,
yeah, you know what?
I think the only part that's fake is where they kind of decide who's going to win beforehand, and then they're throwing chairs and stuff around, and you know, that kind of stuff. But I mean, you got to be crazy. You got to be crazy fit to be throwing these guys around the ring either way. You know what I mean?
No doubt. And I think the acceptable term now is predetermined. As far as who wins the match, I think they call it predetermined. I still don't think they like fake. So I think if you say predetermined, that's okay. But like I said, I mean, look, I admitted, and in my book I even wrote it. One of my heroes growing up was Roddy Piper. I mean, that guy. You know, he was, to me now. I know when I had sort of stopped watching it. When I was younger, there was a clear line between the good guys and the bad guys, where I think once they brought in guys like Steve Austin, they kind of blurred that line where it was cool to be a bad guy. Right. But back when I was younger, I mean, Roddy Piper was the ultimate bad guy. People hated him. My dad hated that I loved Roddy Piper so much. He liked it. Like, it was cool that we were into it, but I know it used to drive him crazy. And that I liked, because he was like the ultimate bad guy. But you know, for someone like me, that you know, I was kind of a geeky fat kid and everything like that, so I would watch as much wrestling as I could get. And someone like Roddy Piper, as crazy as it sounds, like I felt like, man, this guy he's incredible, and I'd go to school on Monday and I'd talk about it, and it would just, like, in a weird way, it was kind of like, wow, this guy's Roddy Piper. I love this guy. The guy gives me confidence. You know, maybe I don't have confidence in any other way, but you know, kids are so impressionable, and I know, you know, and people, if you go back and say, well, who were your heroes growing up? I mean, Roddy Piper's there. I mean, if I had to name 5 people that I idolized growing up, he's in that top 5 somewhere. So,
right.
You know, I'll never disparage it. And his character at the time, when he was a bad guy, he was just like no other, and he did things that, you know, maybe now, like it's funny, like my kids now, they watch these certain movies, like even we just saw Batman vs Superman, and the special effects are insane. But if they went back and watched like the old Christopher Reeve Superman movies, they'd probably be bored out of their minds just because of the difference in technology at the time. So now, if you watch WWE, the heels, if they even still have the heels, probably do things a lot crazier than Piper ever did. But at the time Piper was doing them, they were like, holy fuck, this guy really is crazy. You know, it's kind of like growing up, I hear people say, well, Eddie Van Halen, oh, he's not that great. He's a good guitar player, but it's easy to imitate him on the guitar. And I always remember people going, okay, but do it first. Like, you can play what he's played, but do it first. You come up with it first, and then let people copy you. Just because you can copy him, it doesn't mean he's any less of a player. He came up with it, and you're just copying it. So that to me is saying something. When you're the guy who does it, and people imitate you, that means something. And then I think Piper paved the way for a lot of the bad guys that followed him. So yeah, I mean, I love the guy.
I loved him. Actually, it's funny you mention him because I literally just downloaded on iTunes They Live. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Like, I think the weekend it came out, I think I saw it 4 times. Are you kidding me? I love that. That was awesome.
That's the funniest thing where they turn off the transmitter at the end and all the people that are aliens turn back into aliens.
Yeah. I mean,
sex. You're like, oops.
You know, I haven't watched that movie probably in 20 years, but, man, when it came out, and it was funny because, you know, back then, it's funny, like we're talking about this, you're bringing back so many memories. Back then, there wasn't internet. You know, so a guy like Piper he'd be doing Piper's Pit. Now all of a sudden, well, Piper's Pit's not on, and then it's not on next weekend, it's not on this weekend. I was like, where is this guy? And then, like, you find out now, here he comes back, and now they're promoting the movie. And it's like, okay, he was gone filming a movie. Where now, you know, if you really want to know when your favorite wrestler, your favorite athlete, your favorite performer is taking a shit, you can just go on the internet, and you'll find out. Because if it's someone like Kim Kardashian, she's taking a picture of herself taking a shit and putting it on Instagram. But back then it was like, where is this guy? And like, I'm watching it every week going, God, I hope he's on this week. But during the time they were filming They Live, he wasn't on, and I was like, oh, God, I wonder what's happening. And then you find out, well, they're making a movie. So it was, it's funny how, like, you take things for granted now, but when you bring certain things up like this, it makes me think about back then where it was like, all right, well, where is he? And because I couldn't just go on my computer or anything and just punch in a few keystrokes there and find out where he is. So,
one thing that's bad about the internet now and like Netflix is, like, for instance, I didn't see the first few series of Breaking Bad. People just started telling me about it. So I was when the new series was about to come out, I binged watched the last 5 series. Mm-hmm. But now I have to wait a week for another episode. But I just watched the whole 5 series in 4 days.
Yeah.
So it's like
it's a positive and a negative. It's good if you catch up on things. If you need to catch up on things, like you caught up on the series and everything like that. So it's really good. But then once you're done, like you say, now what? You know, it's kind of like, you know, I watch certain things on TV now, and like in the last few years, I never, like when I was growing up, they never did this. You had a season, and then it was over, and then you waited for next season. Now they do these half-season things. It's like a fall season and a spring season or whatever. And I'm old school. I don't like this. Just run the episodes and then take your break and then come back. And so now it's like I'm waiting for certain shows to come back, and it's like every week I'm checking my DVR because it'll go like a week in advance. And then I'm like, all right, is it here? Is it here? Is it here? And it's like, fuck, it's not here. When is the show coming back? And then I'm going, hey, dummy, just go on the internet and Google it, and I'm sure it'll tell you.
Yeah, I mean, I follow a few shows. I just got a new DVR, and I thought I'd put all my shows into it, but I guess I missed one that I didn't remember. And then I think a Catfish, I think it was. Was it Catfish? Yeah, Catfish started a new series like 2 weeks ago, and I didn't find out until like yesterday. Like,
is that the one on MTV?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only know that because of the whole thing with that football player, Manti Te'o, where he was. Right. That's the only time. I haven't watched MTV, and I can't even tell you how long. So I only know the name because of that. But yeah, it's. I think the DVR, whoever invented it, is a genius.
Yeah. The only thing is, we remember when Sopranos was on. I'm sure you watched Sopranos, right?
Oh yeah.
Didn't it suck having to wait a year for that?
Yes. And not only did it suck having to wait for the new season, on Sunday nights at 11 o'clock, you were like, fuck, now I have to wait till next Sunday.
Right.
It was over. Yeah. Because the episodes were so amazing that when it's over, you're like all amped up going, oh, I can't believe that. That was fucking awesome. And now you're like, shit, it's Sunday, and now I have to wait till next Sunday. Yeah. It's like, it was like the struggle is real, when you're really attached to a series. So absolutely, I know exactly what you're talking about.
The only thing that was good about Sopranos was I actually lived right where they filmed it, so we used to see them filming scenes all the time. So
is that right?
There was a lot of episodes we'd watch it, and they'd be sitting there filming a scene for like 8 hours straight, and then you'd watch it on the show, and it would be like 45 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. No, that must be pretty cool. I know my wife, her family. My wife grew up in Oyster Bay here on Long Island, and her mom and her sister, they still live there. And every now and then they film something in there. I know they filmed a scene. What was that Kevin Bacon show a couple of years ago? And The Following. Okay. I know they filmed a scene in one of the drugstores there for The Following. I know a few years ago they filmed a part of a movie. I think Brad Pitt was there for a couple of days. So every now and then they'll film stuff there. So, but to have something like The Sopranos basically being shot in your backyard where you can kind of watch it unfold had to be pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, I could name 15 scenes that I was standing right behind the camera. And the strip club, the Bada Bing, was about a mile from my house.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
So we actually, me and a friend of mine went in there and we bought Tony a drink. Not Tony, the real guy. We didn't buy Tony a drink. Yeah.
Very cool. That's awesome.
We bought him a drink and then he had to leave quickly. We were hoping to get like a picture, but he was very. He was one of those very guys.
Our dentist went to school.
Yeah, but he's a very private. He was. He's passed now. But he was a very private guy. He didn't want to be involved with the public apart from doing his work. You know what I mean? So do you think he was killed at the end? What do you think? What do you think happened at the end of Sopranos?
Oh, I hated the end. That joke. I never forget. My wife and I are watching it, and it ended like that, and we're looking at each other, going, like, I think we thought what a lot of people thought, like, oh fuck, our cable just went out or something like.
Oh yeah, cable.
Yeah, like what the fuck, and then that was, and then you realize that was it, and I think at the time now it doesn't really matter. I mean, I think at the time I thought he was dead, and then you think, well, they're not going to kill him off because you never know if they want to, bring the series back or do a movie. Obviously, that can't happen now. My two favorite drama series that I've watched were Sons of Anarchy and The Sopranos, and I really didn't like the ending to either one of them, especially because the series were just so amazing. But part of me understands, how do you end it? How can you end such amazing, really masterpieces in my eyes? And I guess no matter how you end it, you're not going to satisfy everybody, so I guess just go with what you think is right.
Didn't he say, like, in one of the
I remember David Chase came out and was, saying, oh, no, he wasn't killed, and then later he was saying he was killed. I mean, I think he left it so open that he didn't even know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably, for him, that was probably the safest thing to do, because then you're not locked in. If you say he's dead, and then all of a sudden there's a Sopranos movie, then people are like, no one's going to be upset. But then you're like, well, this guy has no credibility, And the one thing that I never do, and I don't know why I don't, because everyone I know does it, like if there's something that you like a movie or a TV show, you can find out a whole lot about it on the internet. And I just never do that. I kind of just like going with the flow and being surprised as things happen. So I never really looked to see what anyone said about it or things like that. Like, my kids now, they watch every trailer for every superhero movie that comes out. We went and saw Batman vs Superman the other night.
How was that?
I loved it. I'm a Batman nut, so I loved it. But in the beginning, they're showing the trailer for Civil War, the Captain America, Iron Man, Avengers type thing. Mm-hmm. And my 12-year-old is sitting there reciting the trailer line by line. And my wife just looked at me and she goes, he's saying the whole trailer line by line. I said, it's because he's watched it 200 times. So
amazing how these kids just absorb.
I think his wife's going to take the kid home and throw every Iron Man and every Avenger toy right out the fucking window. And tell her husband to stop fucking talking to her son.
No, that was my son. That was my son that was doing that. My little guy was doing that.
That's what I mean. Your wife's going to stop. Yeah. You're not allowed to talk to him about comic books anymore.
The basic rule we have here as far as our kids go is, we're not strict by any stretch of the imagination. As long as they do well in school and they don't get in trouble, I'm willing to kind of let things be. If it means that, they like to play their video games and they like to watch things, so be it. The minute stuff, because I listen, I was a kid, I liked doing certain things. Obviously, we didn't have internet when I was a kid, but I'm really mostly concerned about how they do in school and how they are socially. And fortunately, I'm kind of blessed in that respect where both my kids are pretty good in school and they're good people and they're not getting in trouble. So I'm kind of lenient when it comes to that stuff. If that changes, my dad was very strict, straight off the boat Italian, Vietnam veteran. He was strict, and I don't know if I could turn it to my dad very quickly, but the minute those grades start to dip or I start getting phone calls that they're misbehaving outside of the house, then things could get sour for them in a hurry.
Yeah.
Do you think you're going to force your kids to do self-defense and stuff like that?
I'm fortunate. My kids are into it. They actually take jiu-jitsu at one of Matt Serra's schools here on Long Island. It's a couple of miles away, and Matt's one of the guys that really has been in my corner since everything happened. He's really, he's been a really good friend to us, and they enjoy it, especially my oldest. He, my little guy likes it, but I think he'd be more interested sometimes in sleeping in on a Saturday or on a Monday. Yeah, maybe on a Monday after school. He's not really into going, but my oldest, he really has absorbed it like a sponge. So, my thing has always been I don't want them to start fights, but I want them to be able to finish them if it happens. And when we were living in Philadelphia, I'll never forget the story. I don't remember exactly where in Pennsylvania. I want to say it might be like Central PA. And there was a guy that was just at a bar, and it's not only there. I mean, it happens. Guy's at a bar with his buddies, and he leaves just because he's done. And I think it was two guys, maybe three, followed him out and just beat the shit out of him to the point that he went into a coma and he died. And and apparently nothing happened. Like there wasn't an argument in the bar or anything. It was just these two guys decided to be assholes, or three guys, whatever it was. And, 2-on-1, 3-on-1, no matter how tough you are, it's kind of difficult. So that story really stuck with me. And I always said I don't want my kids, because eventually I can protect them when we're in the house, or if we're out and I'm with them, I can protect them. But at some point, they're going to leave the nest, and I want them to be able to protect themselves. And this story happened even before my thing. So, you couple that with my situation. And yeah, I definitely want them to be able to handle themselves. They've been doing it now for years. I think they've been in one or two jiu-jitsu tournaments. I don't honestly, I don't have aspirations for them to do it professionally, not jiu-jitsu, but say MMA. I don't need them to do that, but I do need them to be able to protect themselves. So I don't really care if they ever do another tournament. But I need to know that when they're at school, and if someone wants to, get stupid with them, that the minute they go to the ground, that one of my sons is going to get up and he's going to have their arm ripped off. So, they have our permission. If someone I've been telling them this since my oldest first started going to school. I don't want you to ever start a fight, but if someone starts with you, you finish it, and let me worry about the principal. Don't worry about it. You know, I'll handle it. As long as you don't start it, you have nothing to explain to me. You can tell me what happened, and when the principal calls the house, I'll handle it because, you know, and as guys, you know, like you get in school, if you get picked on, that stuff stays with you, you know, and that follows you through middle school, and it follows you through high school. So, you know, the last thing I need is one of my kids getting picked on, and then it stays with them, and that follows them all the way through high school. So my thing was, hey, you know, I told my oldest son, Joey, when he first started going to school, I said, listen, if anyone picks on you, and I said, you make a fist. I said, just aim for their nose. I said, and if you bust their nose and blood's everywhere, don't worry about it. I'll get a phone call, and we'll handle it. I said, but just don't start it. And like I said, I've been fortunate. You know, there really have never been too many incidents, and nothing ever serious. But I know, you know, listen, there's always someone tougher than you out there. But at least I know that, you know, at the ages that they are now, 15 and 12, that they'll be able to handle themselves, you know, to a certain degree, as long as it's not an adult, let's say, picking on them. But you know, it's definitely something I want them to know, because I honestly didn't have that. You know, I didn't have that background. So, and I was picked on a little bit when I was a kid. So, but I never had any sort of training or anything like that. It was kind of just flying blind. So I want my kids to be better prepared.
Have you been totally open with your kids about the whole thing that happened?
My kids, fortunately or unfortunately, I think the most stressful time, probably for all of us, was waiting for my wife and my kids to get to the hospital. When it first happened, and when I got to the hospital, and everyone was being contacted, all of my family and all of my wife's family, they live in New York. So for them to get to the hospital, it didn't take that long. But now my wife and my kids are in Philadelphia. So now my wife knows, you know, she's got to drive from Philadelphia to New York, knowing, you know, not knowing what I look like, not really knowing the details of what happened. Right. All she knows is that she's driving into this potential, you know, I look like Frankenstein, you know, wow. And so she didn't know what to expect, and my kids didn't know what to expect. So once they got there, you know, I forget if it was my mother-in-law or my mom, they said, you know, they're here. So they kind of peeked in the curtain, and fortunately, most of the damage was on the side of my head and the back of my head. So really the only thing in the front was the cut under one of my eyes. And I think when they walked in, you know, they didn't know what to expect. So they saw me, and I had a smile on my face and everything like that when I saw them, because that's really what I was waiting for. Yeah. And I've never hid anything about it to them. I've answered any question that they've had. And, you know, I guess the reality is, when it first happened, I explained it so many times, right, so many different news outlets, that they could pretty much recite it word for word based on what I've said. So to them right now, you know, and every now and then I'll ask them, hey, you know, is there, you know, do you have any questions? Is there anything you need to know? And, you know, I mean, it's been 5 years now, so you know, I don't think there's any issues. There's definitely no, as far as I know, there's no underlying distresses for them. So, you know, anything they've ever asked, I've always been honest with, and they've lived it with me. You know, they lived through the attack with me, and they lived through the trying to go to court with me. So fortunately or unfortunately, they're well aware of a lot of evil that goes on in this world, and a lot of corruption that also goes on in this world. So maybe they're ahead of the game, more ahead of the game than I was at that age.
I was going to ask, actually, after it all went down, I mean, I don't know if you want to give like a quick 3-4 minute description of the actual event, just because, in case anyone listening doesn't know the story we're talking about. But I was going to ask you, did you realize how injured you actually were when it all happened? You know, when it was all over and you're sitting there?
Yeah, basically I knew it because, well, I mean, I'll give you a brief rundown. I'm sitting on the train, and I'm sitting there waiting for the train. You know, I get on the train, and I'm sitting there just waiting for it to move. And 2 cops get on right after me, and they go right in where the engineer is, the conductor. And so we're sitting there, we're not moving. Once we start moving, we're moving at a snail's pace. And next thing I know, this guy just walks up to the door where the engineer is, starts banging on the door. And he says, "Let me in." So on the other side of the door, besides the engineer, are the two cops. And at this point, there's a male cop and a female cop. The male cop is looking into the car. This guy's looking into the window. So they're face-to-face divided by a window. The male cop says, "Who are you?" And the guy says, "I'm the police." And the cop says, "You're not the police." And then without incident, the guy just walks away. So I'm sitting here going, I don't know, that was kind of weird. But I don't know what happened the previous 28 hours, so I'm like, okay, that's weird, but it's New York, whatever. As soon as the first guy walked away, there was a guy standing next to me, and he sprinted to the door, and he's tapping on the window furiously, but he looks scared. Like he's in a panic, and he's tapping on the window.
Who this guy was, right?
He knew, yeah, what I learned later is, I think a lot of people on the subway knew who he was. This guy definitely knew who he was, and he's tapping on the window, and he also saw the cops go in there. So he's tapping on the window, trying to get the cops to come out. He's looking over his shoulder, tapping on the window, looks over his shoulder. So now eventually the first guy starts to walk back, and this guy hightails it right back next to me. So now I'm sitting there going, what the fuck is going on? This is crazy even for New York. So the first guy comes back up. He walks towards the door. He's about 3 feet from the door, about 2 feet from me. I'm sitting. I look up. He's looking down at me. He takes out this 8-inch knife, and he says, "You're going to die. You're going to die." And he stabs her right in the face.
Oh my God.
So he stabs her in the face. And at that point, I say, okay, this is going to happen. And so I went in I tried to do a single leg takedown, not technically, but the object was to get him down. I went for his legs. I ended up shooting him too high, and I ended up basically wrapping my arms around his waist. So it ended up being more like a football tackle,
Right.
which did the job. I ended up getting him down, but what it also did was enable him to have free reign at the back of my head, the side of the back of my head. So while I'm taking him down, he's just plunging him into my head, like boom, boom, boom. And finally I get him down. And now this is the answer to your question is now what happens is I'm on top of him. And because he got me on the right side of my head, the bottom right side of the back of my head, and the left side of my head. Now I'm on top of him, and the blood is pouring out on both sides of my head. So, and since I'm on top, it's dripping forward. It's dripping down. So basically, it's like if you're in your shower and you turn your back to the shower head, the water's going to go down both sides,
Yeah.
And for me, that was the blood.
Wow.
So, yeah, I knew I was cut pretty good. But I had so much adrenaline going. I had felt the pressure of him stabbing me, but I didn't feel pain at this point.
Right.
But now I have him down, and he still has the knife. So he's flailing up with the knife, still trying to cut me, and I'm trying to catch his hand on my wrist. So he flails up the first time. I try to catch his wrist, I miss, and he slices me in the thumb. And the second time he does it, again I miss, and he slices me in the tricep. Finally, the third time, I catch his wrist, I slam it down. Now I'm on top of him. He can't go anywhere. And then the cops that were in the conductor's booth that were there to arrest him, they finally come out and tap me on the shoulder and say, "You can get up now, we got him."
Yeah, and I bet you they knew who he was.
Oh, well, of course they did.
Because the very first time when they tapped on that door.
We were talking about it actually right before you called.
Yeah.
I was trying to explain to Denise. Denise is like, "Oh, but he stabbed all those other people, so wouldn't the cop know he only had a knife?" And I'm like, "How do you say?
Well, he didn't
how
shoot. Yeah,
how do
because
they
he didn't
know
shoot
that he
anybody.
doesn't have a gun? He just didn't use yet. I mean, I guess."
Well, here's what happened. Here's how I found out. So, fast forward a little bit. I finally get to the hospital. Okay. I'm lying in the hospital bed. I got like 10, 15, 20 people around me checking out my head, cutting my clothes off, basically seeing if I was stabbed anywhere else, right? And I'm lying there. It's just chaos. And a cop walks to the head of the bed, and he has a mugshot. And he says, "Is this the guy that did this to you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, you're a hero." And I said, "Well, I'm not a hero. Why am I a hero?" And he said, "He killed 4 people last night." And that was the first time I had heard about the whole thing. I had no idea. At this point, I thought it was just some random asshole trying to kill me. Mm-hmm. So then later, what I found out was in the previous 28 hours, he had stabbed a bunch of people, killing 3 of them. He had carjacked a few cars. He had hit a couple of people, I think, killing 1 of them. So that was 4 people he killed, injured about 4 or 5 others.
Right.
And at that point in the morning, he had been spotted in one of the subway stations, I think on 96th Street. So the NYPD had basically focused their attention in the subways. So every subway was filled with cops. So the chance of this guy Gelman actually ending up in the same subway car with police officers is really not that great if you think about the number of cops, the number of subway cars, and there's only one killer. So the odds are not that great, but lo and behold, here we go. You have like the perfect storm. So yes, they did know who he was, because that's why they were on the train. There was basically an APB out for this guy. They all knew what he looked like. They had all been briefed on it, and they were all in the subway to arrest him. So from the time he knocked on the door and him and the cop had a conversation through a window, they knew exactly who he was.
Exactly.
So the answer to your question is, yes, they absolutely could have prevented the whole thing.
Right.
Unfortunately for me, and I have made this perfectly clear to every interview I've ever done, print, electronic, or otherwise, I am not anti-cop. I am basically pro-cop. My sister is a cop. My wife has cops on her side of the family. And I know there are very good cops out there that take their job serious. Unfortunately for me, that day, the two cops on the train with me were pussies.
I was
and
just
gutless.
thinking that. They
And-
were pussies.
Yeah, and they were gutless,
Yep.
and they saved themselves. And as a matter of fact, what I learned later on is when I had to testify before a grand jury to indict Gelman. They also interviewed Terrence Howell. He's usually the object of my affection on Twitter. He was the male cop, and he also testified. And what he testified to was that, yes, he started to come out of the motorman's compartment. He had reached to open the door and had cracked it open. He started to come out. When he saw something metal, he thought it was a gun, so he closed the door and stayed inside. So what he basically testified to
he
was...
doesn't have a damn gun, right?
Why didn't he just put his gun and put it in the guy's face?
So this is what I'm saying. So basically what he testified to was leaving... Now, New York, you're familiar, has very strict gun laws.
Right.
So what he basically testified to was saying that the two people in that subway car it was illegal to carry a firearm and had the job where they could shoot this guy with no repercussions, or at least make like they're going to shoot him, threaten to shoot him with their gun, because chances are in New York, nobody else in that car had a gun. But they did. So they testified that the two people that could have potentially stopped it decided to stay in the car to protect themselves.
Wow. Did you ever wonder why he went up there and started knocking on the door? Do you think he was looking for the old death by cop thing? Do you think he was like one of those guys?
No, because he didn't know the cops were in there. That's the thing. So aside from the weaponry that the police had, guns and nightsticks and mace, they also had the element of surprise because he didn't know they were in there. When he was having the conversation, he thought he was talking to the engineer. Right. He didn't know the cops were in there. No, what they believe is, I guess in interviews that he's done, he wanted to try to take over the train. Now, what he was going to do once he took over the train, I have no idea. But that's what his goal was, to try to get in and take over the train. I guess that's how he was going to escape. But no, it wasn't. It definitely wasn't death by cop, because he had no idea the cops were in there, which makes it even more insulting to me that the cops also had the element of surprise and still punked out. And that's why it was very important for me to get my day in court. But, like I said, I think the city and the judges in the city, they kind of work hand in hand, so I got screwed on that one.
Of course. You know what's really surprising about this whole story? You hear about all these guys that do the insanity plea to get out of all this bullshit they do, but this guy really was fucking nuts, right? Are you surprised he didn't pull that?
No, you know why? He tried. He tried to plead insanity. And from what my lawyer told me at the time, the doctor that the city used to examine him has a very, very good reputation. So it was going to go one way or the other. If this doctor deemed him insane, it was going to be insanity, because that's how good this doctor's reputation is. But if he deemed him sane, there really wasn't any other way to go for him because, again, with the reputation he had. So once he was done with his, I don't know, interviews, examining him, whatever, and he said he was fit to stand trial, that's when he eventually pled guilty everywhere because he knew he wasn't going to go anywhere with the insanity plea because this judge's opinion is pretty, this doctor's opinion is pretty much gold. So if he had deemed him insane, maybe things would have been a little different, but because he deemed him sane, the public defenders, I guess, and whomever was representing him basically knew that this guy's word was gold. So you're sane, so you're not going to do the insanity thing. And then to Gilman's credit, he basically said, well, then if that's the case, then I'll just plead guilty and start doing my time.
You'd have thought that you would have thought he would have just said, fuck it, let's do the insanity plea, because he really had nothing to lose, because he went to jail for 200 years. You know?
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. He wanted to do the insanity plea, but they wouldn't let him plead insanity once he was examined by the doctor and he was deemed sane.
Okay.
That's where he was going. Once this doctor said he's not insane, he's fit to stand trial, that was it. They wouldn't let him plead insanity.
Oh, so he actually did see the doctor then? It wasn't a case of they gave him the choice to see the doctor. He actually did see him.
Oh, yeah, because he wanted to plead insanity. So once he wanted to plead that, the city said, okay, we're going to run by this. You're going to have to go through this doctor. And like I said, I guess this doctor's reputation is gold. And that's what my lawyer said. This is going to go one way or the other. If he deems him fit to stand trial, then we'll see what happens. But if he deems him insane, then that could take a whole different turn. And like I said, when he said he was fit to stand trial, that was it. It was basically, okay, then I'm guilty. That was it. Because I guess this doctor has a great reputation, and they take what he says very seriously. So once he said he was fit, that was it. And then he pled guilty.
Now, you filed against the city, against the cops, and they pulled some old law from, like, what year was it out?
The whole thing with the special relationship and the cops don't owe a duty to protect, I think it was from the 80s. Basically, I think what was happening is too many people were suing the city and suing the cops. So they kind of, I guess they built in these defenses. And basically what they used to get my case dismissed were these loopholes where they basically used defenses that you see in orders of protection. So in other words, if I'm beating my wife and she gets an order of protection from me, and one day I decide, fuck it, I'm going to kill her, and now I kill her, and her family tries to sue, saying, well, we had an order of protection, you didn't protect her, she's dead. The judge is going to say, listen, we have millions of these orders of protection out there. We can't station a cop outside of everyone's door to protect everyone, which makes sense because there's not enough people to do that. So in a case like that, while it's shitty, it makes sense. It fits the rationale. They're saying because I didn't have a special relationship with the police, they didn't owe a duty to protect. And my thing is, but they're on the train to arrest this guy, specifically to arrest this guy. They know he's on the train. They know he's killed 4 people. If they do their job, nothing happens. And because we didn't have a special relationship, they don't have to face any sort of scrutiny. And the way my lawyer explained it to me was, let's say I lived in New York and I knew who Maxim Gelman was, and I saw the police go in there. Had I knocked on the window and had a conversation with them and said, hey, you guys are looking for Maxim Gelman, he's right there, and then he attacked me, now I have a special relationship. Something as idiotic as that would constitute a special relationship. But because I didn't have any connection with them before that, they didn't owe me a duty to protect. Another way that's been explained to me is if a cop is witnessing a rape happen, he doesn't have to stop it. He can wait for the guy to finish and then arrest him. Yeah. So, and keep in mind, I respect the police. Do I think 99% of the cops would stop it? Yeah, I would like to think that. I would think that a lot of them have integrity and they would do everything they could to stop it. But the reality is if they decided not to stop it and wait for him to finish, they couldn't be brought up on charges in the courts. Maybe they'd be disciplined through the department or the precinct or whatever. But if they tried to bring legal action against them, there's no special relationship there. So, and they ended up arresting him. So it's kind of a warped. It's basically twisting the law around to fit their situation. So, and I've said it a million times. All I wanted was my day in court. You know, they insist. The city insists that their employees did everything by the book that day and did everything the right way. Fine, so be it. If that's what you say, then put me on the stand and let me tell my truth. Then put your employees on the stand and let them tell their truth. And let a jury decide. I don't give a shit if they give me $10 million or $10. I really don't care. Yeah. But I pay my taxes. I'm a law-abiding citizen in this country, and I should have a right to go to court if something like this happened to me. But the fact is, we both present our cases, and you neuter me basically saying, well, they don't owe you a duty to protect, and now I don't have any other recourse because I'm not a celebrity, I'm not rich, and I can't afford a high-profile lawyer to kind of beat the drum for me. So now I'm fucked. This is what they do to me, and now I have no other recourse, which out of the whole thing, and I'm including the actual attack, that's the most frustrating thing to me. Right. The thing I say all the time is, if you get attacked by someone and they try to kill you, that should be the guy that you hate the most.
Ask OJ.
In your life. Yeah, exactly. So in my life, like Maxim Gelman should be my number one most hated person on the planet.
Right.
Now, I think he's an asshole, but I gotta say, like, to me, Terrence Howell was a bigger scum than Maxim Gelman because Terrence Howell's job that day was to protect the public, and what he decided to do was to protect himself. He could have stopped everything before it started, but he's a punk, he's a bitch, he's a pussy, and he punked out and he saved himself instead of doing his job.
Right.
And then to add insult to injury, then they give him an award for bravery.
Yeah, I'm just reading this paragraph from Historical Laws Bullshit. And in 1827, the first police force was in London, and then in 1835 to 1845, they started police forces in New York and Philadelphia. And it says, they were established only to augment citizen self-protection. It was never intended that they act affirmatively prior to or during any criminal activity or violence against individual citizens. Their only duty was to protect society as a deterrent by systematically patrolling, detecting, and apprehending criminals after occurrence of crimes.
Yep,
which
is
the
what
bullshit
they did.
They probably read to you.
Yeah. The day I went to talk to a lawyer about this,
I take note.
He said, you need to know this. And I said, what? He goes, this is what they're going to say. And he told me that day. Now, obviously, I have no experience with the law before that. So when he told me that, I'm like, come on, you got to be kidding me. And he goes, Joe, look at this. And he showed me this. And I'm like, I can't believe this is real. And he goes, we're going to do what we can. He goes, we're going to file. We're going to do this. We're going to fight as hard as we can. He goes, but when they come back with this, I don't want you to be surprised. And I was like, okay. And in my head, it's kind of like in my head, I'm going, I know he showed me that, but that can't be right. My case is different. Things like that. I went through the whole thing where I'm like, this can't be real. And then lo and behold, I get the call one day that my case was dismissed. And I was floored. So.
You're not going to appeal?
Oh yeah, if you appeal, you have to get a lawyer, right? You have to pay another lawyer.
Well, when my case was dismissed, I talked to my lawyer, and basically he took my original case on contingency. So for those that don't know what that means, because I certainly didn't know what it meant before that, if I win, he gets a certain percentage. If I don't win, he gets nothing. Right. So he was happy to take it on contingency originally, but he couldn't take the appeal on contingency because basically now he's got to go fight the ruling of the original case that we already tried to prove.
Right.
And he basically said, he goes, look, I'm just telling you, any lawyer, he goes, you're going to have a hard time finding a lawyer to take this on contingency. And I did. I had a hard time finding anyone to take it. I had actually approached someone like Gloria Allred, and I don't really know what she specializes in, but I know she's a high-profile lawyer. I know that she's shaking up the city a bit at times, and I figured, hey, this could be a high-profile case. Maybe she'd be interested. I got a form email back saying they weren't interested. And then, I didn't want to go after contact guys like Sanford Rubenstein, and maybe that was a mistake on my part. To me, he's just a scum and an ambulance chaser and things like that. And I try to hold myself to a different level of integrity, but maybe in this case that was a mistake of mine because maybe he shakes them up a bit and then we get somewhere. But I'll never know that. But yeah, basically because I don't have a large bank account and I can't afford a lawyer that will take this, I basically had nowhere to go. So I had to, they basically stuck it in my ass and I couldn't do anything about it.
Right. I mean, another thing we were talking about before you called was you know, maybe you could start one of those like GoFundMe's to get money for a lawyer. But my big question was, the public. I'm not trying to be nasty to you or anything, but the public, they're very good at giving money to people that look like they're fucked up from the accident. You've got a couple of scars, but if they wheel some kid out in a wheelchair with one leg missing, they're going to give money to him before they give money to you. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, and I'll be honest with you, that kid in the wheelchair probably should get it before me. Listen, at the end of the day, and this is what I say to people all the time, you know, I should be dead. Based on the amount of blood I lost in that train, and the lack of help I received that day from anyone that's an employee of the city. I say this all the time. The only person on that train that helped me is a citizen named Alfred Douglas. And Alfred Douglas played a huge role in everything that happened that day. But if you ask the NYPD, if you ask New York City, they never mention his name once. And the reality is he's the real hero that day. Okay? I should be dead, and I'm not. So every day I wake up, thank you. Every day I wake up and I'm able to enjoy the day with my wife and I'm able to get another day with my kids. So in your scenario, that kid in the wheelchair, he should get the money before me.
Right.
Absolutely. And I make no bones about that. I think at this point, I don't know if the statute of limitations has expired because it's been a while now. So even if I had someone that wanted to give me $100,000 to fight this case, I don't even know if I could. I mean, there's always a way to kind of fudge the law a little bit, so maybe I could go in a different way. But you know, it's.
Were you looking for money for compensation for what you did, or were you looking for punitive damages against NYPD so they don't do that shit again?
The funny thing was when we first announced the lawsuit, when it first made the papers, I read a lot of things about how I was greedy, how I was selfish, how I was looking for $1 million, how I was looking for $10 million. The reality is, my lawyer and I never, ever discussed the dollar amount because we weren't going to do that until we got to a certain point. And one interview on TV, the reporter asked my lawyer, what would any amount of money, how would it change it? You know, you can't go back, and if you win X amount of dollars, it's not going to change things. And my lawyer said, you're 100% right. I understand that, and Joe understands that. Unfortunately, in today's world, the only way to sort of get any kind of justice is to sometimes hit someone in the pocketbook. Right. And, you know, no matter what we did, we couldn't go back in time. My thing was to make an example out of these guys, the lady and the gentleman. Yeah, I want to make an example out of them, and that's the thing. And you know, I did Gavin McInnes' show last week, and my thing was, you know, he said it. The money, look, if someone came to me and said, here's $10 million, I'm going to have the same reaction everyone else has. Thank you very much.
Right.
Okay? But the fact is, I wanted to go to court. I wanted to me, I'm a big principle guy. I'm a big honor guy. You know, like, to me, if a cop does something noteworthy, and then forget that, you know, cop, a fireman, a doctor. If you do something life-changing and extraordinary, you bet your ass you should be front and center getting all kinds of citations and awards and notoriety because you may have changed someone's life for the better or people's lives for the better. But if you fuck up, and doctors are in a position to fuck up, and people will die, and cops and firemen, if you fuck up and you make mistakes, people's lives will change or end. You also need to be held accountable. So it can't be that when things are good, we're gonna throw you a party, but when things are bad, we're gonna kind of sweep it under the rug. Okay?
They don't like that.
Think about how many people's lives you saved that day.
If the lawsuit came, if you got the lawsuit going, right, and at the end of it they said, hey, we're not going to give you any money, but we're going to admit we fucked up, would that be enough for you?
It would have had to have been something on a grand scale, because I really wanted the court. I really wanted the trial.
Right.
Because I was willing to go to trial. Honestly, if they would have said, look, we're going to go to trial, but at the end of the trial, even if you win, you're not going to get money, I would have said, fucking let's do it.
Right, exactly.
I don't care.
Make a fucking example of them. Fucking example.
Yeah, and like I said, and I always say, look, I'm not a hypocrite. If I won and they gave me $1 million or $500,000 or $100,000, I'm not going to go, no, keep it. Yeah, I'm going to take it. I have a family to support. I got 2 kids that are going to go to college. Yeah. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite and go, no, I wouldn't take it. Of course I would take it. But if they say to me, we're going to go to trial, and even if you win, you don't get shit, I would have said, let's do it. Let's do it today. My big thing was, they could call me right now and say, be at court in an hour. We're going to do this right now. You have no time to prepare. Fucking fine with me, because I have the truth on my side. I don't need time to prepare. All I wanted was my day in court. I don't care what my award would have been. Their basic inactivity that day and their cowardice that day almost cost me my life. They almost made my wife a widow, and they almost, and I'm not orphaned my kids, but, you know, they still have their mom, but my kids almost lost their dad that day. And to this day, I say someone needs to be held accountable. So I don't give a shit about the money, but I want to go to court, and I want this to be a public spectacle, and I want them to realize you fucked up. And I know a lot of
protest.
Yeah,
let's form a protest.
The guy he hasn't got the time to go stand outside fucking NYP headquarters.
Yeah.
And fucking
and that's the thing. No, and that's the thing. And you know what? And I know a lot of cops defend these guys because it's the blue wall theory. Like, they're cops and they're always going to defend cops, and I get that. Okay. But I can't tell you how much support I've received from a lot of cops, you know, that would never go on record as saying it, but I'm in Penn Station every day. And I had cops come up to me and say, listen, they make us look bad. This stuff makes us all look bad. You know, keep fighting. And that meant the world to me because, you know, you never know. There are certain cops, and I'm sure there are certain firemen in any line of work where you're always going to defend your coworkers or your brethren, and I get that. But if you look at the case, like Terrence Howell got an award. So let's say you're a cop and you saved a person or 10 people, or you did something so amazing that you got that award a year earlier. And now all of a sudden they're giving the same award to a guy who's a punk and who's a coward. Doesn't that cheapen the award for you because this guy got the same award and he did nothing to earn it?
Yep.
I would see.
That's what I'm saying. So
I'd give it back. I'd give it back.
Well,
I'd give the same thing.
That's what I'm saying.
Asshole.
That's what I'm saying, and I always try to stress the fact, and even in my book in the beginning, I say I am not anti-cop because I think what happens is now the cops are under such criticism every day that it's easy to hear a story like mine and go, this guy's just anti-cop. I am not anti-cop, but I'm a human being, and I can decipher the fact between good and bad. There are great cops out there, but there are shitty cops out there too, and two of them are on the train with me that day, and they need to be held accountable. And I've been fighting now for 5 years to have them held accountable, and I get nowhere because the judge in this case dismissed my case because, you know, who knows? Maybe they will, one hand washes the other. I have no idea. But that's the most frustrating part is just give me my day in court. I don't give a shit. Listen, if anyone can use the money, it's me. I'm not going to lie. That being said, right, that's what I'm saying. That being said, if I got justice, if I got to testify before the world, and they had to go on because then I testify and I just sit there and I just spill the truth right there. And now Terrence Howell goes on the stand and he gives his bullshit, and now my lawyer cross-examines him and basically embarrasses him. That to me is priceless. Right. You can't put a dollar amount on that. You're sitting there telling the world how great you are and how loyal you are and how honorable you are and how you did your job that day. Okay, prove it. Let's put you on the stand and let my lawyer have at you.
Did you ever consider just filing a complaint with the police department rather than the lawsuit?
You know I could call internal affairs at any time. I actually asked my sister, you know, if there's a statute of limitations on that, and there isn't. And every now and then I get in a mood where I'm like, you know, I'm going to fucking call them.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
You know what? To me, that's not public enough.
Right.
It's not. I'm all about. Listen, I make no bones about it. My favorite movies are revenge movies. I love the revenge thing. I do. And you know what? The incident was public. If I call internal affairs and they open an investigation, I don't know what kind of penalty they get. And as I say it to you now, maybe I will call them. I don't know. But it's an internal investigation. I don't know if they ever make this stuff public. But I'd rather, if you tell me, you call internal affairs, they're going to lose a year's pay, they're going to lose stuff on their pension, or you can bring them to court and they're going to suffer embarrassment but nothing else, I'll take the embarrassment.
Right.
I'll take it. No problem. Because whether Terrence Howell gets his pension, you know, 100% or 95% or however shit works with their penalties, it doesn't make a difference to me.
Right.
It doesn't make a difference to me. I don't give a shit. But I want, everything was public. When the case was dismissed, it was made public.
Of course.
I want the retribution to be public.
You never mentioned the other cop's name. Did he ever come out and say what he had said to the other cop when that? Because the Terrence guy is the guy that closed the door, right?
Yeah, the other cop was a female named Tamara Taylor. She's basically useless, not because she's a female, just for her role in this thing.
Right.
And actually, the reality is, Terrence Howell, after he testified the truth, later on he testified bullshit. He basically, I think, read a script that they gave him,
right,
and it basically said, I did this. I told him to drop his weapon. He didn't comply, so I physically took him to the ground and disarmed him. Well, that's bullshit because well, aside from the fact that he got my name wrong because I was the one who physically took him to the ground and disarmed him, his partner was actually the one who picked the knife up, not him.
Right.
Because the knife when I got it out of his hand, it was a foot or two away from us. So she's actually the one who picked up the knife. Not that she did anything else. Right. She was fucking useless that day. Alfred Douglas, who's a construction worker, did more police work that day than Tamara Taylor did. But Tamara Taylor was the one who picked up the knife and recovered the knife.
Are you still in contact with Alfred?
No, we were in contact a little bit after it happened. And I know the CBS affiliate in Philadelphia was interested in getting us together for something. They had contacted him. And basically I said, listen, you deserve whatever you get, man. I said, ride this for whatever it's worth. And if they decide they want to get us together, for a beer or something like that, whatever, I'm down for whatever. And then it never materialized. And then, it just, I don't know if he has a family. I have my family, and I was involved with the court case and everything. So it was kind of like we didn't keep in touch. But the one thing I will say, when we did keep in touch, he thanked me. It was funny because this is a man that saved my life.
Right.
And he thanked me for mentioning him because he said, in the days that followed, obviously he would watch what happened on the news and he would see what was said by all parties involved. And in the 24 hours after it happened, like I said, the NYPD never once mentioned his name, and he was a vital part of everything that happened that day. And then once my statement started to come out and I mentioned him, basically before it came out, I didn't know his name. And I just said there was a Good Samaritan that did this, a Good Samaritan that did that. And then eventually I learned his name, and I would say his name like I'm saying it on your show right now because this man deserves everything and then some. Because, people call me a hero, and that's fine, and I accept that whether I agree with it or not. Alfred Douglas is the real hero that day, and the only person involved in that incident that has ever given him his due is me. And he thanked me for that because he said, I watched the coverage and I read the papers. They never mentioned me once. They never mentioned my role in this once. And I really appreciate the fact that while you're getting all this attention, you were the one who would mention my name. And I said, fucking Alfred, you deserve everything, man. So 5 years later, I'm still mentioning him because of the role he played, because without Alfred, I'm dead.
Can I ask you what he did?
When he put the thing on the back of his head to stop him bleeding.
Yeah, he was the one who tried to, he was the man who I'd never met before, doesn't know if I have AIDS, doesn't know if I have HIV, doesn't know if I have any sort of disease, put his bare hand on the back of my head on the deepest wound to try to stem the bleeding. And he was the one that stayed with me and tried to talk me down, when I was, at a certain point, I got really excitable and upset. And he was the one that basically, calm down, you're going to see your wife, you're going to see your kids and things like that. And but for the physical thing, I had 7 wounds, 3 in my head, 1 in my face. And the biggest one in the back, the one that he tried to stem, was the deepest one that actually went to my skull. Wow. So blood aside, I mean, just picture that. Picture putting your hand on someone's head that's basically cut in half.
Oh my God.
Where depending on how much you press down, your fingers may end up touching this guy's skull. And this guy didn't tell many people that they ran to the other car. And I don't blame anyone for doing that. I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, no, everyone that helped me is a punk. No, if you're a general citizen and you see this happening, Jesus, your first instinct is to run and take cover. I don't begrudge anyone for doing that. But I think that makes what Alfred did all the more special. And, like I said, never once was he acknowledged by New York City in any way, shape, or form. And that to me is, obviously, I think the biggest crime that occurred in this was me not getting my day in court, but how the powers that be at New York City never gave this guy 1 ounce of credit is criminal to me as well.
That's crazy. That really is crazy. You know what it is? You're a good guy. You're not a piece of shit.
I appreciate that. We all have our faults, but listen. I mean, I try. It's very simple. You know, I'm nobody special. I'm just a man, you know, and I just try to live my life with a certain amount of honor and respect. And it doesn't take much to do that. It doesn't make me special. It's not. I mean, we can all do it. And I do stand. Listen, I'm a male, so I do dopey, immature shit. You know, obviously we all do that kind of stuff. But when the smoke clears, all you have is like your reputation and how you've lived your life. And you know, so I try to instill that in my children. You just live your life with a certain amount of honor, live your life with a certain amount of respect. And I'm not, listen, when everything happened, I was in the headlines, I was in the papers, I was on TV, and, you know, I'm basically a private person. I know it's hard to believe because I wrote a book and everything, but I felt like the story had to be out there about how I was screwed over. But you know, to me, it's all about the people in this house with me right now. It's all about my family. I'd like to think I'm a good person and everything like that, but I'm sure that Maxim Gelman probably thinks he's a good person, you know, so, and Terrence Howell thinks he's a stud, you know, so, I mean, it's all about, you know, your self-perception. So am I a good person? Yeah, I think I am. You know, I'm not out there raping or killing animals or things like that. I'm just living my life, going to work and supporting my family, but, you know, the truth needs to be out there. And, you know, like I said, if I had the opportunity to secure someone with deep pockets or a lawyer that was willing to take the case on contingency, man, I would go at it like a great white shark because the story's still out there and I still didn't get justice, and I don't care how long it takes. I want it, and I won't stop. And you know, we'll see what happens. But if I never get it, it'll always be a thorn in my side. Definitely, you know, the whole attempted murder thing, so be it. It's over. But I want justice, and you know, to me, it's a travesty that I haven't been able to even attempt to get it.
Yeah, that's just crazy. So tell us more about your book. I mean, obviously, it's this, you know, the story in way more detail than we've discussed today. But,
yeah. Yeah, basically the book is, you can order the book on Amazon. Right. If you go to Amazon, search my name. You can also go to tinyurl/Lozito book, and that'll bring you to it. If you go to my Twitter, I have a link to the book right there on my homepage. I think it's a really good book. You know, I made some mistakes. I self-published it. I made some mistakes, not really allotting any money for marketing. So right. you could have the best book in the world, but if people don't know it's out there, they're not going to buy it. And basically, how I'll try to sell the book to you is very simple. This book takes you from start to finish. It takes you on the train with me that day, and it takes you to me getting screwed by the city of New York and everything in between. So I think it's interesting. Everyone that's read it, I've gotten tremendous feedback from. And I wrote it myself. So basically everything comes from the heart. And you will basically know everything I experienced, and you know, from the day on the train to everything with court, when I faced Maxim Gelman in court, and when I didn't get the opportunity to face the New York City Police Department in court. So it's an easy read. I tell guys all the time, if you bring it in your bathroom, it's like a 10-dump read. You know, just leave it on the toilet tank, and every time you go to take a shit, you know, read a couple of pages. It's easy. You probably get through it in 10 or 11 dumps. And you know, like I said, I think listen, I'm biased. I think it's pretty interesting, but right. You know, it's funny. The other day, I had about an hour to kill. I was waiting for my wife, and I went to a bookstore here on Long Island, and I do it to kind of just look around and see what's out there. And in the biography section, I saw a biography that I guess it's a newer biography on Winston Churchill. And then I saw a newer biography on Frank Sinatra. And then on the shelf right below it, I saw a biography on Kim Kardashian. And I said to myself, really? There's something wrong here. I said, you know, when Kim Kardashian's book comes out, she sells more copies in the first 5 minutes than I'll ever sell of my book.
Of course.
And there's something wrong with that. Yeah, and there's something wrong with that, you know, because, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. If you like Kim Kardashian, it's because you think she's hot. And if you like her because you think she's hot, you don't really care what she has to say. You just want to see pictures of her. Yeah. So what is her book possibly going to say? Oh, I fucked Ray J on camera, and now I'm a millionaire, and my sisters wrote my coattails, and now we're all millionaires. Like honestly, what could you possibly want to read in a Kim Kardashian book? But yet, like I said, the first 5 minutes that book was out, she will have outsold my book for the rest of my life. But
I still want to know what she did to get famous. I still haven't figured that out.
she had sex with a rapper, and the video went viral.
All right, so where do I find a female rapper I can fuck?
Yeah, you probably get more interest if you do it to a male rapper. It'd probably be more intriguing. Yeah, so, but that's what I'm saying. So you know, to me, and like I said, the book. I'll be honest with you, the book really hasn't sold much, and I take full responsibility for that. I didn't market it well at all, and I had pinned my hopes on a lot of people that said, hey, if there's anything we can do to help, we'll help you. And then when I went to them to say, hey, would you mind? But maybe I can come on your show again to promote my book. Then it was kind of like, I don't know. So that's fine. But what I can tell you is it's about 200 pages of truth. And if you really want to know the truth and you want to know everything that happened, I can promise you, and it's not an expensive book. It's like $8, $9, $10 on Amazon, whatever. If you invest that little bit of money in it, I guarantee you'll walk away with a whole different perspective on certain things in life, like justice and things like that. So that I can promise you. It's a small investment for a little bit of education, and I tried to make it mildly entertaining as well.
Sounds awesome. All right. Big A, you haven't said anything.
Well, honestly, I tried a couple times and couldn't get in. Honestly, honestly.
All right, I'm gonna run out of the room for about a minute. So, Big A, it's all yours. Don't make Joseph hang up. I still want to talk to him.
Okay.
I would never make Joe hang up, ever.
You're the man. I appreciate that, buddy. Well, you know a lot about this already, so that might be why you haven't asked any questions, because you've heard me tell it on Pat's show and Gavin's show, so.
Oh, of course, but the part that, got me angry is when you got the killer down, and all of a sudden the cop hops out and says, well, you can get up now. That totally pissed me off,
Yeah, man. I mean, that's the part that
and
pretty much pisses everyone off.
And he took credit for something you did. I mean, I'm not talking about being a cop. I'm not talking about rules. I'm not talking about anything else. I'm not just like honor. I mean, like if you did anything, and I told people, no, I did it. I don't care if it's as huge as this or as small as anything. I mean, it's honor, I mean, to come out on a grand scale and tell people, well, I did this and he didn't. I mean I know he's a cop and he can't look bad. I understand that, but it just pisses me off,
Hey, you know what? I say this to my wife a lot when she gets bent out of shape about certain things, especially with some people she works with.
Right.
You can't expect other people to live their life with the same amount of honor and integrity as you live your life. So I've always believed that, but like I said, a lot of my beliefs are really hammered home after this whole thing. So, my big, and this is what kind of gets me through is the support, people like you and that have read the book or heard the story and get angry, because it's kind of like, well, they read it or they watched the video or they heard the story and they're pissed off too. So I must be getting my point across because it angers everybody that reads it. So,
and also, Joe, I know you personally now, and I've hung out with you, and I'm hung out with you and your wife a couple of times already. So I know you personally, and I know the type of person you are. I mean, it's much different than reading a book or hearing about it. I mean, I personally, know you.
Well, I really appreciate that, man. Ever since I met you, you've been great to me, and I see why everyone likes you because you're a great guy. So I appreciate your friendship and I appreciate your support. So I'm glad you're in my corner.
Just look at this
Well,
way.
I support you, and I support all my friends, comics, hosts, I support everybody. That's what I do.
Yeah, man, you're the man. I mean,
Thank you.
that's all I could say. You're the man. I'm glad that you're my friend. That's all I could tell you.
You two should get a room.
I'm just jealous.
We'll get a room next to you while you're with your male rapper.
Paul. Don't be jealous.
I want to hang out with a genuine hero. Why can't I do that?
If I find a genuine hero for you to hang out with, I'll let you know.
Oh, please, will you stop? Do you do not think of yourself as a hero, honestly?
No, I didn't. I've been of the belief that anyone would have done what I did that day, and I've been told that I'm crazy and everything like that. But do I believe that I was put in that situation? Look, I believe that there was a reason why I was on that train that day with Maxim Gelman, with Alfred Douglas, and with these two police officers. Whether you're religious or not, you could call it coincidence, you can call it a higher power, whatever you believe is fine, okay? It's hard for me to say, I'm never going to call myself a hero. I'm just not going to do it. I was put in a situation that presented itself to me, and I acted, and I did what I had to do to stay alive. And, a lot of people have said, you're a hero, but it's not like you're on the other end of the car and you came in and rescued someone. And I get all that, and that's fine. And it is what it is. In the process of fighting this guy off, people have said, oh, you don't know how many lives you saved that day. And that's very humbling to hear. I mean, but you're never going to hear me say that. But you're never going to hear it. And I appreciate that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've had people, especially after it happened when I went back to work, people would stop me on the subway or stop me in the city. And that's why if you look at my Twitter, it says, Joe Lozito, that guy from the subway, because that's what I would get. Hey, are you that guy from the subway? So I would get that all the time. And people have been really nice to me, and everyone has such kind words for me. And if anyone thinks I'm a hero, I appreciate that. And it's nice to hear, don't get me wrong. And, I would never say, don't fucking call me that, But I'm not, you're never going to hear me call myself that. And I even hated putting it as the title of my book. I hated it because I don't think I am, but because after everything's happened, that's what the papers called me, the Subway Hero, Subway Hero. So it's I guess there are worse things to be known for, but you're never going to hear me call myself a hero. I've never once said it, and if I said it, I'd be lying, and, I did what had to be done that day. So, and I believe if someone else was in that position, they would have done the same thing.
Any more questions, Big A?
I don't know if I could.
You don't know, and you know what? Before I was in that position, I wouldn't have known what I could do. I've had people tell me all the time. I've had a handful of people tell me, if I was in your position, I would have done the same thing. And I said, you know what? Then you're better than I am, because if you had asked me what I would have done a week before that happened, I couldn't honestly tell you what I would have done. And I don't think anyone really knows what you would do in a certain situation until you're actually put in that situation. There are plenty of people that say, if that was me, I probably would have just curled up in a ball and he would have killed me. But, and I say, what? Don't sell yourself short, because you don't know that. You don't know what you would have done. And I didn't know what I would have done a week before that. If that happened on a Saturday morning, if you had asked me Friday morning, what would you do? I would have said, Jesus, I don't know. That's never going to happen to me. But then next thing you know, 24 hours later, it happens, and you just you find yourself in a situation and you react. And I was blessed that it wasn't my time. So, but. It happened, and, here we are.
It's crazy.
Thank God.
Crazy.
Oh, yes.
Crazy.
Yes. Thank God. Paul, I don't have a question. The first time I was sitting behind Joe, and I saw the back of his head, and the scar. I mean, the first time I saw it in person, I was like, "Oh my God!" I mean, it looks pretty huge,
Right.
Yeah, he got me pretty good, right, Big A? He got me pretty good, like a piñata.
Wow.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, Big A was hoping the candy was going to come out.
Yeah, well, knowing me, it would be chocolate. So.
Wow.
Oh my God. God, it's crazy, crazy story. One thing actually I just thought about that I forgot to mention when we were talking about wrestling. Big A, do you remember on O&A they used to have this thing where a wrestler would die every certain number of days?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Do you remember how many days they were up with the last one was? Wasn't it like every 60 days?
Yeah, I think it was. I'm not positive. I think it was pretty crazy, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy, crazy.
Head injuries?
Yeah.
Head injuries, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I mean, look what happened to Muhammad Ali with all the beatings he took.
It's amazing that guy's still kicking around.
I know,
It's
right?
really,
He doesn't
it's
know.
really
He doesn't
phenomenal.
know what day of the fucking week it is, but
He doesn't even know 5 minutes ago. It's amazing. It's amazing out of all the guys who have survived that he survived. And you know, the funny thing about Muhammad Ali, everyone loves him now. But back in the day when he was fighting Joe Frazier and everything, a lot of people couldn't stand him. You know, they hated Muhammad Ali and they hated what he stood for. But you know, time heals all wounds, I guess. And you see him now, and you kind of feel bad for him. So everyone loves him now. So you know, and I was never a huge boxer. I mean, the most boxing I ever watched was when Tyson was on his run. I was a lot younger when Muhammad Ali was on his run, so I didn't really, and I still don't get into politics. So back then I definitely wasn't into politics and what his politics were. But I remember there was a lot of animosity towards him, and there's a good documentary about him and Frazier, and he really comes off like an ass. So.
What do you think of Trump then?
He's keeping things interesting, isn't he?
Yeah, he definitely is. I mean, I'm not actually a citizen yet, but I'm thinking about doing my test just so I can vote for him, and not because I think he'll be a good president. I just want to see him fuck with people.
I'll be honest with you. The one I am not into politics in the least. Okay, but I will say this, and I've said this: if Trump gets the Republican nod and Hillary gets the Democrat nod, it will be the first time I ever watch a debate, because I can't even imagine what that's going to be like if the two of them go into a debate against each other. That would probably be must-see TV. So, I mean, listen, you know, I will say that I've said this. The thing about Trump is he's making a lot of people who never gave a shit about politics care about politics, and that's good and bad, because you get people that are actually taking a legitimate interest in it.
Right.
But then you get people who know absolutely nothing about politics, just regurgitating things that they've heard, and they don't really know what it means.
Exactly.
Right. I can tell you what the debate will be like. You are a cunt. And Hillary's going to be...
Yeah.
That's going to be the debate.
I would imagine it would probably go something like that. It would probably be like they're cutting a WWE promo.
Yeah.
So,
versus a remake of Mars Attacks.
You know, here's something I'll say, and maybe this again. I think it was one of the times I saw Jim Norton do stand up, and he basically said it, and it's true. People only give a shit about stuff when it affects them.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, and I think that's true to a certain extent. So, for me, who am I going to vote for? I'm going to vote for whomever is best for myself and my family. I'm not going to lie and say, I want world peace and I want this and I want that. If it's going to be good for my kids and it's going to be good for my wife and myself, I'll vote for them.
I'm glad to hear that. You know why? Because it's like religion. People are brought up to be Democrats or Republicans, and it doesn't matter how bad they fuck up. I'm a Democrat. I don't care.
Yeah,
I'm going to vote for Hillary, even though she's the worst one in the possible can be.
Yeah. So I try not to bullshit people, because I think people are smart enough now where everyone sees where everyone else is bullshit. Yeah. This is the fact. Remember my friend Dean that I mentioned that got me into the UFC and UFC 1? Dean is my best friend. He's a naturalized citizen in the U.S. He's born in Canada. Mm-hmm. Not only is Dean the toughest person I've ever met in my life, he's the smartest person I know, and he knows more about American politics than almost anyone I know. So the night before Election Day, I'll probably call him and go, who am I voting for tomorrow? and he'll tell me, and I'll do it, and I'll just do it, because he knows more about it than I'll ever know, and he was born in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
There you go.
So
that's pretty deep.
Yeah. So I mean, he's a brilliant guy. Really, the toughest individual I've ever met physically, and honestly, really, really smart, really, really bright individual. So I take his word on anything. And like I said, as a Canadian, he knows more about American politics than most people I know.
Yeah, that's awesome. At least he researches it properly. You know what I mean?
It's so nice to hear somebody praise so many other people around them that have touched their lives.
Well, he's praising the people that no one else praised because they're idiots.
No, rather than him
No, I'm saying
being narcissistic.
all the
and
people
talking
he's
about
praised
himself.
is
He's
what
very
everybody
humble.
else should be going. Oh, you fucking saved this guy's life. You're a fucking great person. Meanwhile, they're like, oh, the cops, blah blah blah. They're so.
You know what? I mean, to me, like I said, I think it goes back to me being a private person. Listen, I always appreciate everything that people say nice about me. But if someone deserves credit for something, I'll be the first one to beat the drum for them. And actually, a good friend of mine that read my book said, I liked your book, but you spent a lot of time talking about a lot of other people and giving credit to a lot of other people and talking about different things. He goes, I really just wish you would have narrowed it down to how you felt. And I said, that's not me. I'm not going to write a book just about me. So if I can incorporate other people. Yeah. And, So, so if I can incorporate other people who have helped me in this journey, then yeah, fucking right, I'm going to give them their due, and that's fine. So, you know what it is? That's just. Listen, there's yeah, it's just me, and I don't even think it's not like I do it consciously. Like I'm not going, all right, so I'm going on this podcast tonight. I got to make a list of people I have to mention. That's not how it goes. It just comes out. It's just me because that's just me, you know. And I've been doing it now for 45 years. So if I live another 45, I'll still be doing it.
So what do you think? Who's going to win when? What's the name of the lady that knocked out Holly Holm the other week?
Misha Tate.
Do you think she's going to have a Ronda Rousey fight? And what do you think? Who's going to win that?
Well, Ronda's beaten her twice already. But the way Ronda has come out after getting knocked out by Holly, this seems like a totally different Ronda. And honestly, you know, she's done a few movies, and I'm sure she's making a lot of money doing the movies and taking a lot less punishment. And she's been out a while now. So I don't know what kind. I guess it just depends on the kind of person. I think if Ronda comes back as the Ronda that she was, she's still the baddest woman on the planet.
Right.
And she can still beat anyone, and she's already beaten Misha twice.
I was trying to figure out how they let her be on the cover of that game after she lost.
Oh, because you know what? She's still the most recognizable woman fighter out there. It's not even close, and it's all about dollars. So, you know, if you put Holly Holm on there, then I was fortunate enough. I saw one of Holly's first MMA fights. It might have actually been her first MMA fight in New Mexico. But if you put Holly Holm on there, a fraction of the people know who she is compared to Ronda. And it you know, in marketing and things like that, you know, as you know, I'm sure it's not really about anything but what do they call it, a Q rating or something, where how recognizable are you? How do people react to you? And Ronda is by far, I forget about woman fighter, she's probably the most recognizable woman athlete. So, you know.
Yeah. Do you think that Ronda and Holly Holm both lost those fights because they just weren't ready for the competitor? Because they're both amazing fighters, but did they get too smug, and that's why they lost?
You know, it's tough to say because I think so much of fighting is mental, and obviously I don't know either of them on a personal level.
Right.
So it's really tough to say what was going on. And I mean, I think there's so many factors involved in anyone's livelihood, and especially for someone who fights for a living in the public. I don't know what was going on in Ronda's life at the time. So I don't know. I mean, Ronda is at the time she was being pulled in a million different directions. Right. So, you know, I don't know what was her focus completely on the fight. I have no idea. So for me to sit here and say Ronda lost because of this, that's tough for me to say.
Right.
I think in the case of Holly, I think was the perfect opponent to beat Ronda at the perfect time. The reality is, in terms of her experience in MMA, she has a fraction of the experience that Misha Tate has. And Misha Tate is a really, really good fighter who unfortunately ran into Ronda Rousey twice. Right. So I think for a period of time, Misha Tate was the second best woman's fighter, but unfortunately the best fighter was a world apart. And Misha Tate's a good fighter, and she's a more well-rounded fighter than Holly is. So I think that was just a case of maybe the better fighter won that night.
Right, because it happened to Conor McGregor too.
Yeah, exactly. That's another. I love Conor McGregor. I was really sad to see that happen. Right. But hopefully he gets back and he beats Diaz this time, I hope. But
I think these 3 losses prove that UFC is not fixed or set up or pre-planned, whatever you want to call it. because they would not have their three most recognizable names getting the shit kicked out of them.
No, I mean, even that, you got Ronda losing, you got Conor McGregor losing, you got this kid Sage Northcutt, which they're promoting up the ass now. He loses to basically an unknown, unless you're a hardcore fan.
Right.
All the people there, they got Paige Van Zandt, the next girl they're trying to promote like crazy. She loses. So yeah, if it was fixed, I think you might have them lose once in a while. You're not going to have all four of them lose in a certain amount of time span. Definitely not. So, but you know what? That's the nature of combat sports. Nobody lives forever. I mean, there was a time where Chuck Liddell seemed invincible, and he wasn't.
Right.
And Ronda Rousey seemed invincible, and she isn't. So I think that's part of that's the nature of the sport, and that's the beauty of the sport. Nobody is invincible.
They just rolled out, was it Renzo Gracie, I think it was, the last couple of weeks ago, and they did like a retirees fight.
That's Bellator. I can't even talk about Bellator. Honestly, I mean, listen, Bellator at one time was a competitor of the UFC, a distant competitor of the UFC, and what they did was they bred their own fighters, and they had guys like Eddie Alvarez, who's now in the UFC, and he was like the poster child for Bellator, and they had these good fighters like Michael Chandler. Guys, and I would watch it because I was interested in seeing these guys. And then they're bought by Viacom and Spike, and now they get guys like Kimbo Slice and Ken Shamrock, who's way past his prime, and Renzo Horace Gracie, who's way past his prime.
Right.
And they got Kimbo Slice fighting this guy Dada 5000, who's another street fighter from Florida.
I did like the documentary about him, though. Did you see the documentary about the street fighting?
I did. But now they have this fight. Dada 5000 almost dies.
Right.
Because he shouldn't be fighting
right.
in this type of environment. So Bellator, like I said, I'm kind of old school. The problem is the general fan, the average fan, doesn't really give a shit about the up-and-coming MMA guys when they could see a guy like Ken Shamrock, who they've heard of, and Horace Gracie, who they've heard of. They call them freak show fights. So they want to see the freak show fights. And the problem is, for someone like me who doesn't really care for them, they're not going to stop because the ratings they get are through the roof.
Right.
So for me, it's just easier not to tune in. I'd rather watch, obviously I'd rather watch UFC. I'd rather watch World Series of Fighting or something like that to get my MMA fix. It's to the point now where I can't really tune into Bellator unless someone I know or like is fighting on the card, and even then I'm DVRing it and fast-forwarding to their fights.
Right. Do you like fights that go the whole way, or do you want to see a couple of rounds and then a knockout? I mean, I'm not really a big fan of if they come out and 2 seconds later the guy's out. It's cool to watch, but I feel bad for people that are paying $80 to watch it, you know?
You can have a fight that goes 3 rounds or 5 rounds and get a decision and be a very competitive fight. The problem is you can also have a fight go that long and the fight is boring as hell. I kind of like the fact that you can have both on the same card. When I pay for a pay-per-view, the pay-per-view where Conor McGregor knocked out Jose Aldo was kind of boring up until that point. They had a fight, with 13 seconds, whatever it was. I said, holy shit. My wife said, holy shit. And then it was worth it. It was like, this was awesome. Even though the rest of the card stunk, it was like, wow, this is amazing. So, I think if you watch it, you would just expect some fights are going to go the distance and be competitive. Some fights are going to suck. You're going to get the knockout every now and then. And so to each their own. I just kind of go with the flow.
Do you see that they announced the Nate Diaz-Conor McGregor rematch?
I did.
July 9th. Yeah, I don't know how that's going to go, because they seem to think that Diaz got lucky.
I don't think Diaz got lucky. Diaz is a bad man. I mean, that guy, his ground fighting is just immense, and I knew once Conor got him to the ground, I didn't like that at all. I knew it was kind of, and I'm not putting a flag down here. I think everyone that watches the sport kind of knew when it went to the ground this was bad for Conor.
Right.
Personally, I would have rather seen Conor fight Frankie Edgar, but I'm not involved in that decision-making process.
Yeah, I mean, the UFC's not really known for picking fights that, to make the most money. They actually do try and do it fairly, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the UFC has 2 very good matchmakers on their payroll who do their job better than anybody. So, right. I think what happens is, and maybe because it's my age, they announce fights, and then Twitter is filled with people going, "This is fucking bullshit. This fight sucks."
Right,
blah blah
exactly.
blah. Right? Well, I kind of just sit back and go, "All right, I don't know." Like I said, I'd rather watch Conor fight Frankie Edgar, but when Conor fights Nate Diaz, I'm going to buy it and I'm going to watch it.
Right. Yeah, because I see Nate Diaz was bitching to Dana White saying that why should Conor McGregor get a rematch so quick?
You know, the fact is this. Nate Diaz made a lot of money on that last fight.
Right.
But if Nate Diaz fights anyone else but Conor McGregor next, he's not making near the money he's going to make for this rematch.
Right.
So, I mean, it's really, you know, I think guys want respect and guys want this and guys want that. But would you take a check for $200,000 and get the respect that you think that you, like, get that whatever amount of respect you think? Or would you rather get a check for $1 million and fuck who gives a shit what they think about you? You know what I'm saying?
I'll walk in there and anybody that's in the UFC can knock me the fuck out and just give me $1 million.
That's what I'm saying. So like, if you're Nate Diaz, you know, I think Nate Diaz has a personality where I don't think he's ever going to think he gets the respect he deserves. I think there are just certain people like that. And I think, you know, so I think no matter what happens, he's never going to feel like he gets the respect he deserves. So you made a lot of money for the first fight. You're going to make a boatload of money for the next fight. Just take it and go. And then if you beat Conor McGregor again, well, you're the only guy who's beaten him twice, and you've beaten him on the biggest stage.
Conor McGregor actually reminds me of that. What was the guy, the Prince, the boxer from England that won like 50 matches, but then when HBO signed him, he got his ass knocked out?
You know, I don't follow boxing that much, so I honestly...
Yeah, I can't remember what his name was, but they called him the Prince.
Is that like Nassim or something?
Yeah.
You know how I give a lot of other people credit? You could ask 1 million people right now, and they'll know the name of this guy. I don't.
Yeah, it's Nassim Hamed, right? Yeah, because
in
the first HBO fight, he came out on a flying carpet.
I remember that fight.
and then he got his ass handed to him, but he was beating everybody before HBO signed him, so I don't know what happened.
Right.
You know?
And you know what? The first HBO fight, I'm sure they got 10 million eyeballs on it, so I'm sure they were happy. But then for the next fight, you're like, oh, all right, how many people are going to tune in now?
Yeah, exactly. I think they lost their money after that first fight. All right. Anyway,
yeah,
so
they're HBO. They can afford it.
Of course, that's the money you find down the back of your couch is how much they paid him. So
exactly.
Yeah, so I want to mention your book again. It's called The New York Subway Hero: My Battle with Evil and a Spree Killer. Available on Amazon.com. Just search for New York Subway Hero or Joseph Lozito, and you'll find it. And it looks really interesting, and I'm going to get Big A to steal a copy from you.
No, the guy needs the money.
Yeah, no, it's either way, it's fine.
Yeah.
Listen, if book sales determine whether my kids eat or not, we'd all starve to death, so it's not a big deal.
You'd be living in the subway.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Before you
go, will you do a little bumper for us? Can you just say,
yeah, whatever you need.
This is Joseph Lozito, you know, whatever you want to call yourself, and you're listening to Dysfunctional with Paul, Denise, and Big A. Anything like that. You don't even have to say that much. Anything you want.
Yeah, hold on. I've been hitting the head a few times. Let me just write down everyone's name and stuff. Paul and Denise. It's Paul and Denise, right?
And yes. Big A.
Well, Big A, I know. I'm never going to forget.
Yeah, of course. See, that's notoriety.
Right,
you know, that's what you want to hear.
Paul.
Yeah,
Did you picture
I'm going to Big A. Am I going to see you on Monday?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm definitely going to see you on Monday. So.
All right.
All right. Yeah. So when do you want me to go?
Just whenever you want.
Do this bumper.
As long as Big A shuts up. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me clear my throat. All right. Hi, this is Joe Lozito, the New York Subway Hero, and you're listening to the Dysfunctional Podcast with Paul, Denise, and my man Big A. And I don't know what else I was supposed to say. What else was I supposed to say?
That's perfect.
That's perfect. but we're going to leave the end part on.
Yeah. You know, I'm not a genius. I don't know. Like, I said it, and I'm like, shit, was I supposed to say something else? Like,
we had comedian Jimmy Graham on last week, and he the first time he did it, he's like, we're Paul and Denise, and I'm going to do, oh shit, I'm not going to say that. And that was the first time. and then at the end of it, I put him on hold, and he couldn't figure out how to hang up on his new smartphone. So like about a minute after we hung up on him, all you heard was, I can't fucking get this phone. You're listening to the Dysfunctional podcast. Fuck all of you.
Yeah, so there you go. So mine isn't as epic as that.
I know, but hey, it doesn't
but yeah,
matter.
so
It's all
whatever you need me to do, I'll do it again if that wasn't good enough. But
it's up to you. I don't care.
Well, after I said Big A, I'm like, shit, what am I supposed to say? It's not like I'm going to go, you got to listen to Paul, Denise, and Big A on K-Rock. Like, I don't know. But if that's good enough for you, it's good enough for me.
That's fine. We're not trying to take advantage of anybody. We really
No,
appreciate your
good.
call. It's been very interesting. I'm glad we got to talk about some other stuff, too, because I'm sure you're bored telling that story again and again and again and again and again.
Man, listen, I appreciate you having me on. Honestly, it's always nice to talk to people I have never spoken to before, and I appreciate you guys being interested enough in the story to have me on. So it means the world to me that you would take an interest in it, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Big A, told me all about the story. I had read it years ago, but Big A, reminded me all about it. And maybe when you two are, more seriously dating, you and Big A, we can meet you.
Whatever you need is fine. I'll do anything for that guy. He's a great guy, so anytime.
He needs $20,000.
That I can't help him with. I can give him 20, maybe $20, but that's about it.
Well, he was spending $180 a week on a personal trainer, and now the budget's run a bit thin. So maybe you could be his personal trainer from now on.
Oh God, I got to get myself back in shape before I train anyone else.
Yeah.
Jeez. See me in the summer. I gotta get going here with the training because my wife is a gym rat. She does everything in the gym. She just goes and goes and goes. And the thing is, I like to work out and everything, but half the time I make excuses. Oh, I don't have the time, or my elbow hurts, or I got a fucking earache or something. So. Give me a few months, Big A, and then we'll take care of it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I know I'm gonna get shit for saying this, but I was just 276 pounds. 6
Oh,
months. I know.
Sorry.
6 months ago, and I had the stomach surgery, and now I'm going to the gym every weekday, which I didn't even know what a gym was 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's great, man. That's good for you because I think a lot of people think that kind of surgery is taking the easy way out.
Yeah, I have to hear that shit all the time.
No,
it's not true. I've seen people that have had it, and I'll tell you what, I couldn't do the prep that you had to do before the surgery, and I couldn't do everything you've done after that. So I give you all the credit in the world because it's not the easy way out at all.
I'm down 117 pounds from 276.
That's awesome, dude. Keep it going.
But I don't want to go any further. I look like I've got fucking HIV at this point.
Okay, enough, Mr. Narcissistic.
Maybe you do, and you're just blaming the weight loss surgery.
Oh, yeah. You know what? It would have the $45,000 that my insurance paid for the surgery. Maybe they didn't need to do. Maybe I should have just fucking checked my T cell count.
Well, now you know what there's the next time.
Yeah, right. There you go, Big A. Big A, catch AIDS.
That's funny.
Yeah, of course.
All right, Joseph, we'll let you go. It's been really, really great. Thank you so much, and
Thanks very much, Joe.
You so much.
We will definitely talk to you again if that's okay.
Anytime, guys. Thanks so much for having me on. You guys are awesome.
All right, thank you,
Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care, guys. All right,
Take
bye.
care.